Hi, my name is Mike Dingledine. I'm an architect with SHP Leading Design. We're going to do a tour of sorts today of the new Wilson Middle School. Primarily not to see the school, but to understand the sustainable design concepts that are behind the school. I have with me Olivia Conrad, who's a high school student here in Hamilton, and she is going to join me for this tour, and we're going to talk about how this school is designed along with the other new schools in Hamilton's complete district master plan. We're inside the new lobby of the Wilson Middle School. We're going to talk about sustainability, and we're going to talk about as it relates to this new building. Have you ever been in a sustainable school?
I don't really know. What is a sustainable school?
Okay, it's a good question. Sustainability is, some people think, is a fad, and that's certainly not true. It is about our resources, and that just isn't energy resources, that's building material resources, that's health of occupants, that's how we make buildings last longer, do more with less. Because as we know in this economy, we don't have the money to expend all of our resources on our buildings. We need to spend it on teaching and learning. And so buildings like this, and certainly all the new buildings in the Hamilton School District, are built around sustainability. So we're going to talk about sustainability and how it relates to new buildings. There's three basic categories we call the triple bottom line, the three Ps, as some people call it. It's profit, people, and planet. Profit is about our resources. We use 70% of our utility resources around building and operating buildings. It's not about driving cars, it's not about the things we do, it's about the buildings we occupy. So making buildings more sustainable is a huge advantage for us as a school district, because we can make our buildings less of the cost of operating our school district. When we began the design process for all the new schools, we did kind of a survey on what would be the most important thing about sustainability in a school. And you would expect that saving energy would be the most important thing, and in fact it wasn't. The most important thing was a healthy indoor environment that would allow for great teaching and learning. So the occupants, the well-being of the occupants was really the most important thing when we started talking about sustainability. So that is something unique, and we'll talk about that. Things like daylighting, things like materials that don't produce toxic gases, things like fresh air in the building and good temperature control in the building. So those are some of the things we'll see in the tour today that are the most important features. Also doing great things performance-wise. Daylighting has been linked to better performance, both from the standpoint of students and from teachers. And so you're going to see lots of daylighting strategies in this building that talk about just not a great environment, but a great environment that helps people perform better. So we talked about touring the new Wilson Middle School, but actually there's pieces of Wilson that are part of the old Wilson. In fact, one of the greatest pieces of sustainability strategies is reusing your best assets. And so the Donna Carruthers Fine Arts Wing is a relatively new piece of the old Wilson. And so we knew right away that if we were going to replace Wilson, we didn't want to lose the asset that we had invested in here in the district and the Carruthers family had invested in. And so the media center and the music wing here on this building was the starting cornerstone, so to speak, for the new building. So all the design strategy going forward was to make sure we kept this asset, we used it, we made it functionally work with the new design of the building. And we have saved all the investment that we have in the bricks and mortar of this wing, and that's considered material reuse. And that is one of the cornerstones of good sustainability strategies.
So this entire wing is the same as the old, but
we kept it. We tore down the original Wilson that was built in 1930, but this wing that was built in the 90s, we kept. And it's all going to be part of the new Wilson, and it's designed into the new Wilson in terms of how we designed the building to connect to it.
Were there any problems connecting this old part of the building to the newer part?
Well, it certainly makes you have to deal with it. It certainly makes you realize that this place on this site, where that hallway connected to the old building, would have to be where the new hallway connected. We did update finishes with new recycled materials. We did put in a fresh coat of paint. But our mechanical system, our lighting system, our technology, and most of our furniture was capable of being reused. And so we have a lot of reuse in this part of the building. And again, it allowed us more dollars and cents to spend on the strategies in the newer part of the building. Okay, we're in a typical classroom, and we're going to spend a little time talking about the most important thing, in my mind as an architect, about sustainability, and that is daylighting. Daylighting is a emotional and performance-based issue, but it is also an energy and efficiency-based issue. And the most important thing about daylighting is to orient the building correctly in the first place. And therein lies one of our big challenges. The old Wilson was oriented toward Eaton Avenue, which is an east-facing orientation, and east orientation is terrible for daylighting.
So
why?
Why would east and west orientation be bad?
Okay. You need daylight that gives you light energy but does not give you heat energy. We're trying to keep this building manageable from the standpoint of cooling loads, and so Any window that faces east and west gets low direct sun, and that will penetrate deep into the space. It'll create glare, and most importantly, it'll create heat, and our air conditioning loads will skyrocket. So by orienting all the classrooms in the new Wilson, north and south, it made for a very interesting building, because no longer did the classroom windows face Eaton Avenue, they face north and south. But it created a building that allows for all the classrooms to maximize the advantage of daylight. As you can see, looking at a window, we want windows that are high, close to a sloping ceiling. The sloping ceiling allows the daylight to bounce and traverse deep into the space, and so it allows for daylighting to make a very big impact on the room. Then you say, well, if you're using artificial lights in a classroom, what difference does daylighting make? Well, it's a good question and a good problem, because if you keep the lights at full strength, the heat from the lights and the loss of the advantage of the daylighting means you're using the same amount of energy as if you had no windows. And so all the lighting in this building is daylight sensitive. And so as more daylight comes in this building, the lights literally dim to the level at which they are needed to keep the lighting level at the desktop appropriate. So the lights by the window are far dimmer in this classroom right now than the lights by the wall and the lights in the corridor. And so that is saving energy, it's taking advantage of our daylight, and it's not overlighting our spaces in our classrooms, and it's allowing the light levels to be just right.
And these windows look really nice too.
It's a great feeling daylight gives you. Windows and natural light, and even natural ventilation at good times of the year, they're all positives for healthy occupancy of a building. So it couldn't be more important that each classroom have lots of daylight and controlled daylight in the right direction. So those are the things that we strive for here in this building. And even the arch in the window has a strategy to get, again, daylight higher and closer to the ceiling. As you can see, the ceiling is lit up really well when you get the closest to the ceiling with the windows.
Aren't windows, like, don't they cause a lot of energy loss?
Well, a window is a weak link in your envelope of your building, but of course it's a very important part of the performance of the building. Certainly the windows have to be very, very high performance. These are double and triple pane windows. They have internal blinds that allow you to control heat and light loss, reflect heat in the winter sometimes. They have screens so that you can use natural ventilation when it's appropriate, again, to save energy. And so windows are a piece of an energy strategy, and yes, they are losers of energy in cold winter days, but they also are gainers of energy from the standpoint of the light they let in the building. So a good window is a very important part of a sustainable strategy, and that is having one that performs very well against the elements and against the things that cause disruption in and outside of a classroom.
So is there anything different about the way you turn the lights on, or?
Well, as you can see, we still have the good old-fashioned light switches in the classrooms. And it's something that we have found as architects, it probably takes the longest for people to get used to, because in fact, these do not have to be used anymore. They're here because people can't get used to not having them. But in fact, all the lights in this building are based on occupancy sensors. And so if you come in this classroom, the lights will come on automatically. If you all leave it, they will go off automatically. And that goes for all the spaces in the building. So they're here because people still want manual control, but in fact, if they get good at it, these will never have to be touched again, because all the lights in the building will automatically work based on occupancy.
So they're going to sense if someone walks in?
Correct. Every ceiling has, it's a great question, every ceiling has a sensor on it that senses infrared heat from people. And so it's not just motion in the classroom, it's motion of a living person that basically tells the classroom a couple of things. And we're going to get to this in a little bit. It tells them that time to turn the lights on. It also tells them it's time to start measuring the carbon dioxide in the room, because the fresh air that's coming in this room is based on how many people are in here as well, which is another big energy savings we're going to talk about a little bit later.
So how much money does that save? Or?
Well, it's a good question. Lighting energy is a big part of your energy bill. I'm going to say 50 cents a square foot for a building this size is probably $40,000 to $50,000 a year. If you can save a third of it because you turn lights off in unoccupied spaces automatically, you're saving $25,000 a year on the district's energy bill, just in one building, from making sure that people aren't responsible for turning the lights on and off.
So I'm dying to pull these. What's going to happen?
Well, if you pull that one, you're going to get wet, because this is a safety shower, and it's in all art and science rooms where there are chemicals and paints, and it allows for safety to wash things off. This is an eye wash, so when you open it, it creates a situation where you get a gentle flushing of the eyes, and you can wash hands. But it's completely a safety feature. It is required in schools, and I do imagine there's going to be a few people that are so excited to pull it, they're going to pull it to find out what it does, and they are going to get wet. But after a while, kids get used to the fact that these are in new schools, and so I think it won't be a problem for very long. But it is a safety feature of all new buildings. We're in one of the restrooms, the student restrooms in the building, and certainly when you come to a restroom, we get to the subject of water efficiency. A lot of us in this part of the country don't think of water efficiency as so critical because we live where there's plentiful water. But in fact, it's still a resource and we still want to preserve it. And so the way we do that is we control the volume of water that goes into fixtures. My toilet at home flushes with 5 gallons of water. The toilets here in this building flush with 0.6 gallons of water. And so that's a huge savings of water. We're looking at the sinks as well, and not only do they use, go ahead and look at put your hand under, not only do they not use a lot of water, it's a very low flow, they're timed to be on for just about 3 seconds. As long as you have your hand under there, you will get flow, but when you take your hands out, they will shut off automatically. So again, a lot of waste of water comes from not just single point use, but leaving things on or having drips. These have great control, and the infrared sensors allow for just the right temperature and the right amount of water to come out. And again, I would expect this school to use about 20% of the water that the old Wilson used. And so it's a big savings, certainly of a resource, and certainly something that all future public buildings will have. Okay, we're in the new gym of the Wilson Middle School. It's the single largest space in the whole building. And so it is a definite candidate for sustainable strategies. The biggest one is the fresh air. There are occupancy sensors in this gym that regulate the amount of air that's needed, fresh air that's needed. In the old days, a building like this would take 16, 20 tons of cooling. This gym is taking a couple, 3 tons of cooling because it's able to, most of the time, use just a little bit of its capacity, because most of the time this gym is not filled to capacity. These bleachers are not filled to capacity. And so a much more efficient system in here. Also, we've talked about it everywhere in the building, daylight is very important. The amount of artificial lighting needed in this gym during the day is very low because we have provisions for very large diffused glass windows that allow for diffused daylight. Nothing worse than a direct sunlight in the face of a person shooting a foul shot. So we've avoided those kinds of problems by having the cow wall, we call it, material in the windows. It's also very high efficiency from an insulation standpoint, so it prevents a lot of heat loss in the winter through that outside wall. We have a wood floor. It's common for gyms, but it actually is what's called rapidly renewable material. So it is readily available. It's grown here locally in the country, and maple floors are still considered very green materials from the standpoint of they can be rapidly renewed by growing new maple trees. So we have a lot of recycled materials throughout this building we'll talk about a little bit later.
So I see there's some randomly placed doors. What are those actually used for?
It's actually the greatest mystery around the design of the new middle school. Even the building department in the city of Hamilton has asked us what in the world those are doing there. And frankly, and ironically, they are a sustainability issue. When you have large air handling decks like we do that serve this room and serve the cafeteria next door, you have very large equipment on those decks. Typically, access to those decks is made only when you have to replace a large unit. And that might be 15 years from now, that might be 50 years from now. But the fact remains that when we want to get into that room and replace a large piece of equipment, we need a place to get into there. And that is our access point. So it's not a room that will ever be occupied. It's not a room that will have any kind of traffic. It's not a room that needs a ladder or a stairway. But it is a room that a forklift will reach up and grab materials or grab equipment out of that room in the future whenever it needs to be maintained or replaced. And so I'm sure for the life of this building, people are going to wonder what those architects were thinking by putting that door up in the air there. But it is, in fact, a very important door, and it does have a very important purpose. It just never needs to be something that people travel through. Spend a little time talking about materials in the new school. They don't look different than schools that we've seen for a long time. VCT tile, concrete block, painted, laminate formica type topping on furniture and equipment, caulks and rubber and ceiling tile, all looks the same, but in fact it's very different. There's 3 material strategies when we talk about new buildings. One is, are the materials renewable? Do they come from a resource that still is plentiful, and can it be rapidly renewed? We talked about the maple gym floor being one of those kinds of materials. Does it have recycled content? All the carpet in this school is at least 30% made of recycled carpet. And so the higher the recycled content, the less raw materials we're using in new materials. The biggest change in materials in sustainable strategies is what's called the emittance factor, and it's a complicated word called volatile organic compounds. And good, solid, wear forever materials of the old days were great materials. They lasted, they wore like iron, but they all contained organic compounds that gave off gases. And in the 70s, when we made buildings more energy efficient because of energy expense, our buildings made us sick because all of those materials gave off organic compounds. They gave off gases. Formica gives off a gas, VCT gives off a gas, carpet glues, caulks, paints all give off gases. In the last 5 years, all those organic compounds have been basically rendered illegal in new materials. Good reasons for that. Our buildings have less volatile organic compounds in them, but we need less ventilation air now to make our buildings clean and healthy because there's nothing in them that's making us sick. So they tend to be materials that you see and you think haven't changed, but every paint formulation, every tile formulation, every Formica formulation in the past 5 years has changed dramatically. And so this building is full of materials that don't give off gases and do allow for a much healthier occupation of the building. Another interesting material that's kind of different, and if you want to spin out there, is look at our roof. Typically we all remember black coal tar roofs, and they were great at shedding water. They lasted a long time, but they were terrible, terrible heat sinks. You hear the heat island effect from buildings, and that really creates heat that not only goes in the building, but also heat that raises the temperature all around this building, on the site and all around us. And in a community full of black roof buildings, the temperature can be 3 or 4 degrees higher than communities that don't have that. This building has what's called a solar reflective index of 70 or higher. And that means this roof reflects most of the heat that hits it. It doesn't go into the building to add to our cooling loads, and it doesn't add to the temperature of the environment around this building. And so this entire roof is made up of a light reflecting roof material that allows this building to be cooler and be more appropriate neighbor in this neighborhood. So we're standing in a stairwell at the end of a classroom wing, and we're facing Eaton Avenue. You see lots of glass here, and there's a couple reasons for that. One, we aren't in a classroom. We are in a hallway. In fact, we're in a stairway, one of the most important places to have light in emergencies. And so if lights go off in this building, we have natural light that floods this hallway, and it's a big safety factor. But if you're thinking about what we talked about earlier, we are facing east. And so this is east glass, which gains lots of heat. And so the question is, are we creating a problem for the building? Or are we wasting energy? And the answer is a little bit, but one of the things you may or may not notice if you drive by this building is these windows have a tint on them. It's called a shading coefficient, and about half of the heat energy that's hitting these windows on the outside is not coming through. And so there's a lot of filtration of that energy at this level, but there's also a lot of light coming in here. The other thing is, because this is a stairway, we don't care that it's a little warm in here. We don't care that it's not the perfect temperature of the classroom setting. We're going to let it be 78, 80, 82 degrees in this hallway in the hot days because, frankly, that's okay for just traversing the building through a stairwell. And so we're letting the heat build up a little bit here, but we're also taking advantage of the safety and the daylighting. And yes, as an architect, I'm going to admit part of this is the way we wanted the building to look to the street. It's a little bit of a contemporary flair to an old Art Deco style building that we replaced, and we wanted that to be part of the architecture of the building. So there's all kinds of reasons for why we do things, but we have always taken into account the energy impact of what we do.
And you also said that the survey showed that people were more concerned with like the health and the occupants within it. So the light in an emergency would be
Perfect.
Definitely a health.
Right. The safety factor of the additional daylight is a big impact on the school and obviously important to those who plan the school.
So can the heat be controlled in different parts of the building?
Yes, actually we can. Every single room has a thermostat, and every single room is in what's called a zoned heating system and cooling system. And so every room is a zone that can demand and ask for its own cooling and even heat. So we can have a day in the building where there's air conditioning in one side of the building and heating in the other if it were needed. And so each building and each room is zoned so that it can be controlled independently. And that way we can save energy by having hallways and stairways not use the same energy that classrooms need to keep comfortable.
And of course you're not going to be in the hallway as much as you are in the classrooms.
Correct. Okay, we're standing here outside one of the 5 mechanical rooms in the building. And when I say mechanical room, I'm talking about the air handling rooms. Intuitively, you would think that one big central plant would be the answer. And in fact, for producing energy, that's the answer. We produce energy in a chiller plant and a boiler plant that's in the central core of the building. But when it comes to distributing the air in the building, we spread it out. And the reason of that is sustainability of materials. The ductwork that sends air around this building would be massive. You could drive a car in it if you were to do it from one central point. So what we've done is we've split these rooms up into very strategic points in each classroom wing in the building. And it allows the ductwork and the air and the hot and chilled water that comes into these rooms to be very efficiently used. And in fact, you can see you're using giant air handlers that fit in a room this size, but that serves just about 8 to 10 classrooms in this building. And so it takes 5 of these rooms across the building to create all of our environment. But in fact, it's a very efficient way to do that. The only thing that's coming from the central plant is in hot and cold water that's in these white pipes you see behind us. And those are ways that we get that hot and cold power to these rooms. Another thing we do, which is very energy efficient, is we catch the energy going out of the building. A lot of air comes in the building for fresh air, a lot of air goes out of the building that's used, but it's still chilled and heated. And so we don't want to lose that energy. So inside these air handling boxes are energy recovery wheels. They are basically a giant Brillo pad of metal that sucks the cold or the heat out of the exhausting air and then puts it back into the incoming system. Okay, we're in the cafeteria of the new building, and a couple of sustainability design strategies come to mind here. One is it's a multi-purpose space, not designing square footage that you don't use all day long. So this is a performing space, this is a meeting space, this is a cafeteria, eating space, and again, all the same strategies that go into the rest of the building are in play here. Occupancy sensors, the mechanical system, knowing how many people are in here and just bringing fresh air in for the number of people that are here, and of course daylighting. We have less than 10% of the lighting power on in this space, and it would serve a lunch crowd perfectly with just the daylight that we have in the space. So again, very little energy being expended from the lighting system, no heat coming off the lighting system because we're taking advantage of high shading coefficient windows that are bringing lots of daylight into this space.
So what are the panels on the wall?
The colored panels are their decoration, but most importantly, they are acoustic sound absorbing panels. So they lower what's called reverberation time of a space. So when sound is bouncing off walls, it'll continue to bounce until something soft absorbs it. So those panels are up there to lower that sound level. The curtain on the stage does a great job of helping with that. The ceiling does a great job of helping with that. The hard floor does not. So because a lot of schools have hard floors and hard walls, we add those kinds of provisions to help lower the sound.
So it'll keep it quiet in here?
Quieter. Nothing will keep a cafeteria quiet, as we know. But it'll help absorb some of the echo and some of the reverberation sound that makes a space noisy. The sound system here also will produce white noise, which will also help mask some of the sound levels when that's necessary. It's a little high tech, but a simple way to do it is through these panels that we have on the walls. Right next to our central mechanical services is our central dumpster bin. There'll be fencing and closure here, but all of these are for individual distinct dumpsters for recycling materials. So the school can engage in a full-blown recycling program from paper to glass and plastics and cans, as well as traditional trash. But it can all be managed here separately, and we designed that with Rumpke's truck sizes and different systems in mind.
So I've noticed a lot of these cabinets around. What's the significance of those?
It's an exercise in spending less on the things you need to share. And so these are located at the intersection of every hallway in the school. It's for a shared laser printer. So instead of putting printers in each classroom or printers in a central location in the building or in computer labs, they're distributed all over the building. And so any teacher, any student that has a device that can print to a network printer will be able to come access their printer here in these locations. So I'm guessing there's less than a dozen of these locations in the entire school, and that will save a lot in ink and toner cartridges and printer repairs and just the initial cost to put technology in these kinds of buildings. There's also wireless networking nodes in all these locations, so again, every device in the future that we're going to use on a computer network is going to be available to the network in the school.
So all of these are saving money and saving energy at the same time?
Both. Perfect. Well said.
How is this building 50% more energy efficient than buildings that have been built in the past?
It's a good question. Just buildings we built 5 years ago were twice as inefficient, kind of what you're referring to. Even the freshman school, which is the newest building in Hamilton before this last capital project went around. It's partly change in policy, change in codes. It's partly change in materials, but it's really a lot of it's change in technology. Pulling technology together, one thing, daylighting, can save you maybe 10% of your energy. Another thing, like carbon dioxide sensing, can save you 10%. Another thing, like dimming the lights with occupancy sensors, can save you 5%. You start to knit those together and you build up to that 50% pretty quickly. We are using technology now to allow our buildings to use less fresh air, but still make the health of the occupants very important. We are balancing the lighting levels using daylight and using interior light. We are lowering the heat gain through equipment and Energy Star appliances in buildings. We're trying to do things like get rid of plug loads, which exist in a school all over the place. So there's just so many strategies now that we're knitting together into one complete decision that it makes the 50% number come pretty quickly. Not one thing can do 50% energy savings, but if you put 10, 15 things together, now you start to have significant change. And when you talk about buildings the size of Wilson, 130,000 square feet, if you can save $1 a square foot a year in energy, that's pretty easy. That's $130,000 a year in energy costs for one building in one school district. And so the numbers are staggering, and it's not small. So when you look at the entire district, 8 new elementaries, 2 high schools, 2 middle schools, or 1 high school, 2 middle schools, freshman school, the savings in this district that we're going to realize over the change from the old district that we were to the new district that we are, it could be well over $1 million a year in energy savings. And so that translates into teaching and learning dollars and not into electric bills and maintenance dollars.